you start shipping the cameras to customers, and very quickly you get feedback about the things that resonate, the features that make sense, the features they care about. It turned out that, we had a lot of ideas of things we wanted to build, and, the overlap between what we wanted to build and what the early customers, really liked, it wasn't a perfect overlap. And so hearing that early feedback and those stories, really drove product roadmap and how we developed things, and I think, ultimately, allowed us to more quickly get to, the successful product that, that we ship to the market today. Sure, I'm Filip Kaliszan. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO here at Verkada. You can think of our product as a software platform for all things physical security. We started with video security cameras, and we've expanded to several product lines. We unify all of these devices, we put them on one centrally managed software platform, and we bring all of the technology to the cloud for our customers. Today we're valued at just about $3.5 billion. We serve about 20,000 customers globally. We've got 17 offices around the world, and in the US we serve 60 of the Fortune 500 businesses. I'm very much a builder. I came to college and I didn't know, like I think many students, I didn't quite know what I was going to study. I took some computer science classes, and this is over here at Stanford. What I loved about it is, I could take ideas and I could talk to friends about ideas, and, seemingly with very little effort, you could turn those ideas into something practical. Write some application, you could do something, and, it would just kind of work, and it would, achieve something. Back in 2006, 2007, when I was an undergraduate student, it was very surprising to me that, here in the Silicon Valley at Stanford, the way you would choose classes was through this big book. Everyone was making some kind of sheet on the side to see, how to fit and take all the best classes to meet all the requirements to graduate. It seems like in 2006 that should be online, that should be digital. We built this tool called CourseRank as a class project. It was very much a web application. We launched it, and first it was my roommates, and then it was the people on the floor of the dorm that were using it, and then floor below and the floor above that started using it, and then it started spreading kind of across campus. It's extremely exciting. I mean, you're just sitting there and refreshing Google Analytics and seeing how many users you're getting. Pretty much I think by the time we were graduating, like the vast majority of students in the undergraduate class at Stanford were using our solution. So it was definitely a cool feeling knowing that, okay, this thing that we made was useful to so many people. I think it was, at the time, 7,000 or maybe 8,000 undergraduate students at Stanford using it, which was, I don't know, it felt like a big number to a 21-year-old at the time. I think, from the CourseRank days, one of the key lessons was learning how to work effectively with the small group of people who are my co-founders. When you go through school, or at least when I went through school, you learn different things. You don't necessarily know what is the sweet spot, like what is it that you are good at, and maybe someone else, what is it that they're good at. My co-founders and I, we all had strong opinions. We all thought we were experts on like every single topic, right? You learn from that experience who's good at what, right? And I think you learn to develop trust for each other, and you learn that it's really important to delegate things as opposed to own everything directly, right? I think really the dynamics of how to work with a team effectively, and then, later how to scale that team, was maybe one of the key lessons at CourseRank. But yeah, basically, look, what had happened was we were going along and building the tool and getting it deployed to more and more universities. And the team from Chegg reached out. I think it was the CTO actually who reached out to me. And in my mind at the time, I thought, hey, our company is still so early and so small. And by the way, it wasn't making any money yet. I didn't really think it was plausible that they would, want to buy it, or want to buy it for, a meaningful amount of money that, that would want to make us, kind of change course. And I remember this was a very particular point of stress in my life. And again, I was 22 at the time, but I knew I could build something here. I knew I could build something bigger. And I knew I had to say no to Chegg initially. And I knew I had to come up with some number and some way of negotiating. But I do remember, we sat around essentially as founders with one of our advisors. We had to decide on how much it would take to sell the company. We sort of came up with a number. And we came up with the number thinking, there's no way on earth Chegg is going to pay that number to ever buy us. But, then the conversation with Chegg kind of continued. And over time, the numbers converged enough that, ultimately we decided to pursue that path. It's very interesting because, I think if I think back to that time, at that moment in time, to me, it was very much like, okay, what's the financial transaction? What am I getting here? What I think I vastly underappreciated, and what was certainly a great outcome of this decision was the years that followed. I was the first company that Chegg had bought. After CourseRank had been acquired by Chegg, which at the time was very much a startup. It scaled. When I joined, when they bought me, they were just about 80 people. So I think it's 2010 that Dan, who was the CEO, they brought my company in, and the first thing they said is, Philip, just keep building CourseRank within Chegg and keep scaling it up. What I didn't expect, but what was, very fun and very cool to learn and observe was, they wanted to buy more companies. And essentially Chegg was transforming itself from a pure textbook rental business to a suite of digital student services. And one of the crazy things for me, and again, I was very young at the time, they said, hey, Philip, we bought you, what that feels like. Help us evaluate these other acquisitions, right? And there I am, 22, I've never, bought anything, not a company for sure. And, next thing I know, I'm doing diligence and I'm meeting teams and I'm, evaluating how this might fit with that and how we would bring the products together. And then, the next piece, which was, I think, quite useful later on in life for me, was I was on the team, I was on the product team, and part of my responsibility was integrating and bringing some of those products together. And, I remember at the time thinking, oh, this is going to be so easy. These things make sense, you're just going to piece them together, it's going to work. The obvious lesson learned from that experience was, man, integrating acquisitions is extremely difficult. It is actually very hard to make different teams learn how to work together, make their products integrate tightly and look like one product to the end customer. And so I learned a lot through that about some of the tactics of how you execute that on the product side. But I think, perhaps even more importantly, the dynamics of, of the teams and how do you get the people working together and how do you get everyone, excited to build this new thing that's a sum of these different parts. And that was a super fun time in my career. When we set out to start a company, which ultimately, became Verkada, the way we did that is my co-founders and I, we took a year off, essentially. And we said, we'd give ourselves 12 months, explore ideas and talk about these ideas and prototype and build these ideas. The key thing was being very open. And sharing our thoughts with a lot of people, ranging from maybe prospective customers to investors to friends to family, and really seeing what resonates and what makes sense. Some of the criteria for starting Verkada and landing on that idea was, we wanted to find a problem that's large enough and has a large enough market and a meaningful enough space behind it. The market for video security at the time in 2016 was just about between $15 and $20 billion of annual spend worldwide. So in the US, I think school safety is kind of a big issue that that many schools are tackling. Schools are refreshing a lot of the infrastructure they have for safety, and that became kind of another segment of the market that became a very powerful pull and demand for Verkada. I think when we were sitting in my living room and we were exactly $0 and four of us co-founders, that 15 to 20 billion of annual spend, felt like massive and certainly big enough to build a meaningful business around it. The first prototype for Verkada was very quick. It was a camera that was based on a Raspberry Pi computer that you can buy on Amazon. And that was the very, very, very first thing we did. I think we built, maybe 60 or 70 of these. And, that was literally us in my living room assembling these together. We wrote some very basic, very rudimentary software to stream video and store video. And one of the first things we've done was we build these and we gave them to friends. We gave them to anyone who would be willing to install it, basically. And the whole purpose of this was, just to learn about what are the challenges, what doesn't work about video streaming? What happens when you have more than 10 or 20 cameras in a single location, behind a maybe not so great internet connection, right? So that's kind of how the journey started. And I remember when we placed our first, manufacturing order, our manufacturing partner, I think, told us that, the minimum order size was 250 cameras. I think it was summer of 2017, 5 pallets of cameras arrived from our vendors in Taiwan. We didn't know where to ship them, so they shipped into my garage. I looked at it and I had this moment of oh shit, I definitely can't park my car. And, most of my cash that I had on hand is now sitting in my garage on these cameras and I have 0 customers. So it was definitely that reality check moment. Once we had the product working, there is this moment where you have to decide, is it ready to ship? And I think, being a product person and being an engineer, you always want more. You always want it to be better. And I certainly felt that way. In 2017, when we were launching our first cameras, I felt like there's not enough features. I felt like the features that were there, I could think of all the bugs, right? And so there's this natural incentive to delay, and not launch the product. And actually, one of the things that worked really, really well in our favor, which in retrospect I really appreciate, is we didn't have very much funding. Kind of the line of running out of money was not far in the distance. And ultimately, that's what forced us to launch the product. I think had we had more money, we probably would have kept working on it in a silo inside the company. But, because our runway was limited, we were forced to launch. And I think that was one of the best possible things and decisions we could have made, because you start shipping the cameras to customers and very quickly you get feedback about the things that resonate, the features that make sense, the features they care about. It turned out that we had a lot of ideas of things we wanted to build, and the overlap between what we wanted to build and what the early customers really liked, it wasn't a perfect overlap. And so hearing that early feedback and those stories, really drove product roadmap and how we developed things. And I think, ultimately, allowed us to more quickly get to, the successful product that, that we ship to the market today.
Take one.
Hi, I'm Brandon DeVito. I head up the product team here at Verkada. Some of the things that's been interesting for us is how we kind of scale new product categories. The first stories was we started out in cameras 6-7 years ago. And then when we expanded into access control, we actually had a couple of false starts. We staffed a team and they would get distracted, or these were some of the founding engineers, and they get pulled back into working on the core product. So we actually took them from our old offices in 3rd Street here in San Mateo, California, put them in the basement, gave them really crummy snacks, and said, you can't come back up until you ship a product. And so we took the CTO, one of the founding engineers, and had them build a product, and they moved very quickly and started out with Raspberry Pis and horribly ugly LED lights that were flashing. And then we progressed and started testing with customers and finally got to final industrial designs. But that progression of actually living the experience, using our tools and our products very early on was something that we've mimicked. And also this ability to kind of create a team that's wholly formed and almost, the startup within a startup is a little bit trite, but really thinking about how we can create a pod that's self-sufficient and can go after a big market. We really believe in an in-office culture. Building physical products, building security cameras or access controllers, you actually have to touch it. Even thinking about our badge readers, the scan distance is something that we test and we live and we dog food on a daily basis. And so it's always been kind of a fun combination of having engineers and product people and the sales team all kind of under one roof and working together to build these products, but also really experience what it's like to live and work in a Verkada managed or secured building.
It's a lot about, the touch points that make being at work fun and exciting, right? I think if you come to work and you're energized by your colleagues and you look forward to seeing them and you look forward to working with them, we've done, a lot of subtle things. You may have noticed on the different floors of the building, the snacks are different, the drinks are different, right? So, if your favorite snack is on floor one, you're gonna get some exercise, running up and down stairs, but 2, you're gonna bump into, fundamentally different people. So I think all of these types of elements kind of contribute to the energy and to the experience that, that the employees have. And I think cultivating that, at least in our minds, is extremely important to having a happy, productive, team and employee base. Yeah, one of the, probably biggest fuck-ups I had in the journey of Verkada was, I think this is back in 2019, the company was maybe just about 200 people and the team was growing very quickly. We had this moment in time where we had a few people on the team who engaged in inappropriate, gross, disgusting behavior. This kind of was raised and came to me and we thought about it. And it was the first time that I encountered that type of situation. I thought I could first principles my way to an answer. And the mistake was really, we didn't send a clear message. We didn't part way with those individuals. And that led to, kind of a lot of confusion on the team as to, who we are, what's our morality, how do we think about these things, right? And so that particular problem, I think, the solution in retrospect, which is very obvious, is when you have folks on the team who, don't behave accordingly, don't represent the culture that you want to build, you just make a change, right? And so I think, that's one very clear learning. The other learning that I had, and this was, kind of specific to me, was once the company started scaling and once you get to sort of, again, hundreds and then eventually thousands of employees, it's really important for me, but also other folks on my team, other leaders in the company. It's important that everybody understands how they're perceived by everyone else, right? When you're a startup and you're 5, 10, 15, 30, maybe even up to 50 people, everybody knows each other. I think, once you reach that scale where it's, hundreds and then thousands of employees, you can't expect to know who you are unless you invest effort in communicating who you are, right? And so I think for me, it was, a lot of tactics, but, everything from small group lunches and get-togethers with groups of employees that I might not otherwise interact with to things like, more frequent all-hands meetings and more thoughtful all-hands meetings, build a lot of these programs and touch points. And I think all of that serves this idea of like communicating to the whole team, and ultimately, who we are as individuals. It's just extremely important. I think when you start a company, you're just under constant pressure. And it's self-imposed, really. I mean, but you need it, right? Because I think, you have to realize that building something, I think it takes a tremendous amount of work. Many things fail, right? And so I think, especially in the early days, very much every day you're thinking like, oh my gosh, is this thing gonna work or is it not gonna work? And definitely along that journey, there's certain points in time where, something went sideways. A feature that you thought was gonna work didn't work or is taking longer to build. The journey of building a business and building a startup, very much requires, some level of persistence. And the way I describe it is things are always either good or bad, and it's cyclical, and it happens, from the early days of the company. But it happens even now, right? The company is big, it's 2,000 people, it's well funded. I always tell folks, charge up your energy and store the energy and store the positivity when things are good, because you never know what's gonna happen, right? You never know when something like COVID happens or when the markets turn. Like, those things are out of our control. Having the energy and the ability to persist through those tough times, and the ability to really, kind of continue executing with a level head as things go up and down, is ultimately, I think, what is one of the key things to long-term value creation. And so that's kind of like one of the things that I try to focus on and remind everyone on the team about. Yeah, I think my first advice is probably try building something and spend a lot of hours building things. I think as with everything else, I think if you think about getting really good at a sport or getting really good at playing piano or getting good at something, the same is true about if you spend a lot of time honing those skills and you just keep building up that scale and building up those experiences. I think that is one of the core skills, at least that I found, to be extremely helpful over the many years that, that I've built products.